We've pulled together some of the most bizarre and random facts out there. From an exorcism performed on a famous religious figure to the time a city had to flush their toilets in unison. I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 5 unique facts you won't easily find from Googling. In 2004, scientists took the bold decision to run wind tunnel tests and computer simulations on frisbees, just to look at how frisbees fly, analyzing their lift, drag, and spin. I know, it sounds like a waste of a good research grant, but then it led to a happy accident. What started as something amusing ended up helping engineers design lighter, more stable drones. Without it, we might not have epic aerial shots in movies, sweeping stadium views at football games, or advanced military surveillance. All of that because some scientists really cared about frisbees. When two lawyers couldn't agree on where to hold a deposition, a wise man by the name of Judge Gregory Presnell had enough. Instead of wasting more time, he ordered them to settle it with a single game of rock, paper, scissors right on the steps of the Tampa Federal Courthouse. Hey, that's not far from here. To make it even more official, he got Matty Lesham, co-commissioner of the USA Rock, Paper, Scissors League, to oversee the match. He even predicted both lawyers would choose paper, well, since they deal with so much of it. In the end, they did what lawyers do. They chickened out and decided another way. There's an amazing condition out there called bilateral gynandromorphism. This sounds complicated, and it is. The main fact you need to know is that it gives animals male and female characteristics. You can find it in lizards, butterflies, and our own personal favorite, chickens. Their chromosomes don't separate neatly, meaning they can be half male and half female. The Apollo moon landings of 1969 inspired awe and wonder. They were also broadcast on TV worldwide, so everyone could share the astronauts' journey. What did NASA do with the tapes afterward? Well, they wiped them, of course. This shocking decision was made for economical reasons. The agency reportedly needed the tape to record something else. We only have footage because other people made their own copies. Shining light on the back of your knees can help you sleep? Well, that was the finding of a study carried out in 1998 by scientists at Cornell University Medical College in New York. It was believed that this unusual part of the body was linked to circadian rhythms, just like our eyes are. These rhythms, otherwise known as the human body clock, can allegedly be reset through the knees. Not everyone agrees with the study's conclusions, but it's definitely a unique fact that you need to know. In 2013, a strange science project was announced that combined advertising with hydration. The University of Engineering and Technology in Peru unveiled a billboard capable of providing drinking water to deprived communities. It did this by filtering, condensing, and purifying water vapor. People could then access the fresh water supply through a storage tank, which was thought to contain approximately 100 liters of collected water every day. Did you know that Mount Everest got 3G internet in 2010? It could only be provided at the bottom of the famous mountain, but it was a start. 10 years later, Wi-Fi data masts were placed on Everest itself. A literally groundbreaking move. Hopefully this means less lost climbers and greater connectivity. Scientists at Nanyang Technological University recently attached an electrode to a Venus flytrap, which allowed them to pick up the plant's natural electrical signals and even send pulses back. They're hoping that by monitoring these signals, they'll be able to detect early signs of disease or distress. They can also make the flytrap close its leaves on command by sending a pulse back, which could help the plants capture prey more efficiently and protect themselves from harm. It's not exactly a conversation yet, but it's a start. I get it. A Guinness World Record for the world's whitest paint doesn't sound all that exciting, but it comes with an added benefit. It could actually help cool down the planet. Scientists created an ultra-white paint in 2021 using barium sulfate. It reflects 98.1% of solar radiation, making it the opposite of Vanta Black, the super black paint that absorbs nearly all light. Researchers say coating a standard roof with this paint could cool a building by 10 kilowatts, outperforming most home air conditioners without using any electricity. Hunger is a real thing, people. Studies have shown that low blood sugar doesn't just make people snappy, it can fuel aggression. One study linked hunger to spousal arguments that spiraled into abuse. Another study found that low blood sugar played a role in 84% of future violent acts among offenders. Why? Well, the brain runs on glucose. When it runs out, self-control goes with it. Irritability turns to rage, and before you know it, someone's throwing punches. Lydia and Timothy Ridgway spent 30 years frozen in time. And I mean that literally. Their embryos were created in 1992 for an IVF procedure, but remained in storage for decades. Instead of being discarded, their biological parents donated them to the National Embryo Donation Center, where the Ridgeways adopted them. And in 2022, they finally got their chance at life. Since the first frozen embryo birth in 1984, over 8 million children have been born through assisted reproductive technology. But Lydia and Timothy are the longest frozen embryos to ever result in a healthy birth. A 2018 study raised an unexpected question. Was Leonardo da Vinci cross-eyed? Researchers looked at 6 of his portraits, including some self-portraits, and found that in several, one or both of his eyes drifted outward. People with strabismus, a condition where the eyes don't align, often see the world differently. Their brain suppresses input from one eye, creating a flatter, more 2D-like view, which, for an artist obsessed with depth and perspective, could be an advantage. If true, Da Vinci may have had intermittent extropia, a condition that could have helped him see and capture depth in a way others couldn't. Depending on your age, you may or may not remember the woman the world knew as Mother Teresa. For our younger viewers, she was a Catholic nun who dedicated her life to helping the poor and sick, winning a Nobel Peace Prize along the way. Although there is controversy, look into her. So you can imagine that it came as a shock to learn that she had an exorcism before she died. In 1996, Archbishop Henry de Souza visited the 87-year-old in the hospital and found her restless, pulling out wires and dazed. Fearing something beyond illness, he suggested an exorcism. She agreed, and after a short prayer-based ritual, she managed to fall asleep peacefully. Apparently, these kinds of exorcisms aren't all that unusual, but it's a bit unsettling to think that she needed one. No, but seriously, she's a very controversial figure now. So, yeah. Mother Teresa ain't all she was cracked up to be. Have you ever thought about the monetary value of the chemicals inside your body? Weird as it may seem, someone actually worked out what it would all cost. Adding the amounts of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and other elements together, producing a fascinating result, your insides can be sold for a grand total of $160. Sounds a little cheap, I'm not gonna lie. Although, if you're a Full Metal Alchemist fan, you already knew that. What's the most powerful finger on the human hand? It could be the pinky. Yes, that little digit is responsible for approximately 50% of your total hand strength. How does that work? It helps if you think of your fingers as a team working together. Even if one little pinky fails, it can have serious consequences for the rest of the gang. If you think negatively about things, then there could be a genetic reason for this. ADRA2B is a receptor, which basically means it's part of a cell that attaches itself to substances, creating a crazy biological cocktail. ADRA2B is known to impact how someone processes emotions, resulting in a negative outlook. This can be a good thing because you're also alert to any threats that might disrupt your well-being. Do you know where New Holland is? Or rather, do you know where it used to be? The country we know as Australia used to be called New Holland. This name was given in the 17th century and lasted right through to the early 19th century. Since the people who landed in Oz in 1606 were Dutch, they naturally used one of their own place names. Australia didn't become widely used until around 1800. It was first written down by Matthew Flinders, an explorer from England. Most of us wouldn't look at blood and think, I bet I could build a house with that. But that's exactly what British architect Jack Monroe did. After seeing how much cow blood goes to waste in slaughterhouses, he got to work. He mixed fresh blood with sand, preservatives, and an anticoagulant, then molded and baked it just like a regular clay brick. The result? A surprisingly strong waterproof building material. Blood bricks aren't as tough as traditional bricks, but they hold up well in dry climates, making them ideal for desert communities where water is scarce. 2 decades ago, a drought in Zimbabwe led to a water shortage so bad that people couldn't flush their toilets properly. Without enough water, waste didn't make it all the way to the sewers, so the pipes in the city of Bulawayo got clogged and had serious blockages. The city solution? A synchronized flush. Officials ordered all the residents to flush at the exact same time to push waste through the system. The same thing happened again in 2012 when another drought forced water rationing. So for weeks, every Monday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m., 1 million people flushed in unison. I guess desperate times call for desperate measures, but just imagine being that one person who forgot. Okay, so this one is more for our foreign viewers. You know how Mount Rushmore always looks massive in movies? Well, appearances can be deceiving. The heads of the 4 presidents are only 18 meters or 60 feet tall. For context, that's less than a ninth of the height of the Washington Monument, which stands at 169 meters or 555 feet. So it's not exactly the towering spectacle you might expect. However, that being said, Mount Rushmore is still an impressive piece of craftsmanship. There's a great amount of detail in the carvings, even if their size is a bit of a letdown. Have you ever heard of Virginia Woolf? If not, well, it might be time for a trip to the library. She's not exactly known for her pranks, but in 1910 she pulled off one of the boldest hoaxes in British history. Woolf and her friends dressed up as Abyssinian royalty, fake beards, darkened skin, and somehow bluffed their way onto a British battleship. To make it convincing, they even learned a little Swahili, which wasn't spoken in Abyssinia, now Ethiopia, but hey, A+ for effort. Incredibly, the Navy bought it and rolled out the VIP treatment. The scam only fell apart after they left, when one of those fake beards finally gave up. Humiliated, the Royal Navy threatened to sue before deciding it was best to pretend the whole thing never happened. As the old saying goes, you only get one chance to make a first impression. In fact, the speed at which a first impression moves will surprise you. They've been clocked at 1/10 of a second, making them the race cars of emotional responses. Rajendra Singh is an environmentalist whose passion for water preservation has led to some insane results. From the 80s onward, he managed to revive over 12 rivers in India that were previously thought gone forever. How did he do this? Singh gathered local communities to work together, harvesting rainwater, planting trees, and restoring natural water supplies. Crucially, he employed traditional methods, using the ways of the past to solve drought issues of the future. Singh's nickname is the Waterman, and it's not difficult to see why. The Tower of London, one of the city's most famous landmarks, was built in 1078 by William the Conqueror as a royal residence. However, from 1100 to 1952, it also served as a prison and held some of Britain's most infamous criminals. Today, the historic site is open to visitors, but what many people don't know is that the tower is permanently guarded by 6 ravens. According to legend, should they ever leave, the kingdom will fall. So to be safe, the tower always keeps 7 ravens. 6 for tradition, and 1 spare. If you picture the Parthenon as a grand white marble masterpiece, well, you're only half right. Archaeologists now believe it was once covered in vibrant blues, reds, and greens. Greek archaeologist Evi Papakonstantinou found traces of the bold colors after a laser cleaning of the temple. But after centuries of exposure, sun, wind, and pollution, the Parthenon slowly faded from a striking statement piece to the bare ruins we see today. The Hollywood sign has been around since 1923, but back then, it actually said Hollywoodland. By the 70s, it was falling apart and needed a makeover. The Chamber of Commerce needed $250,000 to fix it, so Hugh Hefner did what he did best. He threw a lavish fundraiser and saw to it. Then, in 2010, the sign was in trouble again. Developers wanted to build luxury homes around it. A conservation group worked to protect the land but was $1 million short. Hefner stepped up one more time and donated $900,000 to save it. So whether you loved him or hated him, without Hugh Hefner, one of America's most famous landmarks wouldn't exist today. As bizarre as it may sound, you can actually tie water in a knot. This happened in 2013 when experts started playing with water molecules. Based on Lord Kelvin's theory that knots exist on an atomic level, the team manipulated the water and tied it together. Why would they do this in the first place? It was believed the research would have a major impact on fluid dynamics, and the principle could be applied to other natural phenomena. It's actually just bending my brain to think about. Dogs appear to have a sense of when their owners are around. How does that work? It's well known that our canine companions have a super developed sense of smell. This is apparently used when we're out of the house. The longer we're out for, the lesser our smell becomes. A dog can then theoretically pinpoint when we're going to be back through the volume of smell in its living space. This isn't a product by the Willy Wonka Company. It's actually a real-life invention that was reported on in 2014. Christian Poincheval of France is the individual responsible for this allegedly amazing pill. The exact scientific explanation seems to be a little vague, so I can't give you a thorough breakdown of how it works. I mean, do you really want me to? Ultimately, a fart is a fart, whether it stinks of chocolate or not. If you've ever thought your mornings would be better with a giraffe, Giraffe Manor in Nairobi, Kenya is the place for you. The luxurious estate doubles as a breeding and rehabilitation center for endangered Rothschild giraffes. And the best part? These friendly giants roam freely around the hotel. Thanks to strategically placed windows, the giraffes usually poke their heads inside while guests enjoy breakfast and aren't shy when it comes to a quick pet or photo op. The manner is great, but the real magic appears once you share your morning coffee with a giraffe. Infidelity is nothing new, and people have dealt with it in all kinds of ways through the ages. But Peter the Great's response was pure horror. When he discovered his wife Catherine was having an affair with William Mons, he didn't just end the relationship, he ended the man. Mons was captured, interrogated, and beheaded, but Peter wasn't done. He had the severed head preserved in alcohol and placed in Catherine's bedroom as a gruesome reminder of her betrayal. It stayed there for years, right up until Peter's own death. The Yuffe twins grew up on opposite sides during World War II. Jack and Oscar Yuffe were separated as identical twin babies in 1933 and went on to have very different upbringings. Oscar went to Germany, where he became Catholic, while Jack stuck to his roots in Trinidad. The twins' father was Jewish, so it was one heck of a development when Oscar signed up for the Nazi Party. After the turmoil of the Second World War, Jack and Oscar were finally reunited, though at the time they couldn't overcome their differences. Eventually they reconciled in the 70s, several decades after they first parted company. The American Civil War was brutal, though there was a way out of the deal if you had the financial means. Commutation meant that a reluctant soldier could pay someone else to fight instead of them. The amount of money offered was $300, a large sum back in the 19th century. If you think that sounds bad, then you'll be amazed to hear it was all perfectly legal. Most fish are happy to stay in the water where they belong, but not the snakehead. This fish actually walks on land thanks to special gill arches that let it breathe outside the water. And it's not just flopping around either. Its angled fins can help it crawl up to a quarter of a mile to find food. Even worse, they're everywhere. Originally from Africa and Asia, they've spread across dozens of US states. With no natural predators, they're thriving. And yes, they will bite you if they're provoked. A pseudoscience is any belief that claims to be scientific but lacks real proof. You know, like astrology for personality traits or iridology for health diagnosis. But one of the weirdest has to be rumpology. Yes, butt reading. And you won't believe how many people are into it. Jackie Stallone, Sylvester Stallone's mom, swore that the creases, dimples, and curves on your derriere could reveal your past, present, and future. According to her, the left cheek reflected the past while the right predicted what was to come. Is there any truth to it? Well, some people honestly believe so. It's not every day you hear about a death by bra, but in 2015, Christina Bond met a fate as ironic as her last name. The 55-year-old was carrying a handgun in a bra holster, a concealed carry option that straps a firearm between the breasts. While adjusting it, she somehow turned the gun toward her face. The gun was discharged and she was killed in the process. Can you believe that a person's heart slows down in a highly stressful situation? This has been observed in the responses of bomb disposal experts. They have what is surely one of the most stressful jobs in the world, making this fact really astonishing. While you'd expect someone's pulse to quicken in dramatic circumstances, this doesn't happen when you're trying to avoid getting blown up. Of course, it's worth noting that bomb disposal experts receive a lot of training and are more accustomed to stress than most people. Robotics and AI are taking over the world, but they rely on old-fashioned stimuli for their learning processes. One surprising teaching aid for machines are Rubik's puzzles. The old-school Rubik's Cube, with its various combinations, has had an effect on things like how we search the internet. Not bad for something invented in 1974. Here's an interesting question. How long does it take a robot to crack a Rubik's Cube? Reports from 2024 state that one robot solved the puzzle in an incredible 0.305 seconds. We can do it really quick by switching the stickers. Probably not 0.035 seconds, but yeah. Now, no laughing. I know it sounds bizarre, but geniophobia, the fear of knees, is very real for those who suffer from it. Some people panic at the sight of their own knees, someone else's, or even just kneeling. It often stems from past trauma, like a bad knee injury, but in some cases, it's triggered by watching one too many gruesome movie scenes. It's usually treated with a mix of therapy, medication, and exposure therapy. Meditation and exercise can also help, but anything involving lunges or kneeling is probably off the table. You may think there are 4 states of matter: solid, liquid, gas, and plasma. Well, in 1995, a 5th state of matter was introduced. The 5th state is a collective referred to as BECs, or Bose-Einstein condensates. They can be found in things such as atomic gases and superfluids. BECs are composed of atoms but flow together as one thing, making them part of matter itself. In 2009, Russian researchers discovered 3.5 million-year-old bacteria frozen in Siberian ice. These microbes, called Bacillus F, were still alive. When tested on mice, flies, and plants, the subjects became stronger and healthier. So, by the time 2013 rolled around, one scientist, Anatoly Brokov, thought, hey, maybe this could be the key to eternal life, and injected himself with it. Can you guess what happened? Well, he's actually still alive. Yeah, really. By 2015, he claimed he felt better than ever and hadn't had the flu in 2 years. Immortal? Who knows? But in 2017, he even shared the bacteria with a German actress, because apparently longevity is better when it's shared. Being deaf was kind of an advantage during the days of the Ottoman Empire. People with hearing difficulties were hired as servants due to their silent communication skills. This was a lifesaver when it came to classified messages. Information was passed along by trusted servants non-verbally. Any hostile forces found they couldn't listen in because, well, there was no sound. This sounds a lot like Bernardo in Zorro. I love Bernardo, he's awesome. Have you ever heard of the touch-me-not plant? Also known by its scientific name, Mimosa pudica, or the sensitive plant, it reacts like a shy person when interacted with. The plant folds its leaves as if guarding against intruders. It then opens them again after a few minutes. What happens when you drop a touch-me-not plant? Not much. At least that was the case with plants taking part in a 2015 study where the Mimosa pudica was deliberately dropped. After this happened a few times, the plant learned that being dropped wasn't a big deal. This shows that plants use a form of memory to recall experiences. The Himalayan Sherpas come from a tough mountainous environment. Because of this, they have a tough genetic makeup to match. It's believed that Sherpas can handle lower oxygen levels. Also, they know how to use oxygen more efficiently, giving them the edge in cold and remote places. Oxygen plays a key role in blood circulation, meaning the Sherpas cope better in these extreme conditions. The Trevi Fountain is one of Rome's biggest tourist spots, but just around the corner is something far less famous, and way weirder. A church filled with Pope hearts. Inside Santi Vincenzo e Anastasio a Trevi, you'll find 22 marble urns, each holding the preserved heart of a former pope. The tradition started in 1583 with Sixtus V and continued until Leo VIII in 1903. Back then, popes were mourned for 9 days before burial, so their organs were removed and embalmed to keep things from, well, getting unpleasant. The tradition finally ended in 1914 when Pope Pius X declared he wanted to be buried whole, and every pope since has followed suit. In 2017, an extraordinary discovery was made about tears. They can generate electricity. How is that even possible? The research focused on lysozyme, a protein naturally found in the salty stuff that flows from our eyes. If you place enough pressure on this protein, it creates electricity. How powerful is this potential energy source referred to as piezoelectricity? Well, more powerful than you might think. For example, you could theoretically use lysosome crystals to help power electronic devices. At just 5 feet tall and under 90 pounds, George Stinney was far too small for the electric chair. But that didn't stop the state of South Carolina from sentencing him to death in 1944. The 14-year-old boy was accused of murdering 2 girls, despite the only evidence being that they had once stopped by his house to ask about picking flowers. Because of his size, it said he had to sit on a stack of books just to be able to fit in the chair. The conviction was overturned 70 years after his death. When do you think the first chemist was born? The answer is thousands of years ago. Back in the ancient civilization of Mesopotamia, a woman called Taputi created fragrances from nature. These oils and perfumes involved specialized work with chemicals, making Taputi the first chemist to be mentioned by name in cultural records. When you receive a paper cut, you are damaging a highly sensitive area of skin. Your fingers are full of nerve endings, making them one of the worst places to have an injury. Maybe if you got a cut elsewhere on your body, it wouldn't be as painful. I'm not going to demonstrate that theory, by the way, I'm just speculating. The intense stinging produced by a paper cut comes from these sliced nerves, plus the shape of the cut and the effect of air on the wound. So rest assured, you are not being a baby when you react badly to a paper cut. Evolution isn't just about survival of the fittest. Sometimes it's about survival of the least infected. Scientists now believe that our sexual reproduction may have evolved as a defense against parasites, which target genetically similar hosts. The idea, called the Red Queen hypothesis, suggests that mixing genes through sex helps to create genetically unique offspring, which makes it harder for parasites to adapt and spread. And a study on New Zealand freshwater snails backed it up. These sexually reproducing snails had the upper hand, where the asexual ones were parasite buffets, which means that, if you think about it, sex might in fact be the only thing that's keeping us all from getting wiped out. Star Wars has given us some iconic props: lightsabers, blasters, the Millennium Falcon, and even an ice cream maker. In The Empire Strikes Back, there's a scene where people are evacuating Cloud City, and one guy, Wilro Hood, is actually casually carrying what is clearly a regular ice cream machine. Fans noticed, turned it into a cult obsession, and the machine later got an official Star Wars name, the Camtono. Decades later, The Mandalorian took the joke full circle and brought it back, only this time it wasn't holding ice cream, but Beskar. It was the tiniest Easter egg, but us Star Wars fans loved it. Your electric razor has a different pitch depending on the country you're in. In the US, it buzzes somewhere between A sharp and B, while in Britain, it's closer to a G. That's because the sound comes from the electrical frequency powering it, 60 Hz in the US and 50 in Europe. This frequency controls the voltage cycles, which in turn affects the hum you hear. So, if your razor ever sounds a little off while traveling, don't worry, it's just adjusting to its new electrical accent. When police raided a marijuana growing operation in Michigan, the owner, 60-year-old Hendrik J. Westers, had a bold escape plan. Grab a canoe and paddle away. Yeah, it didn't work. After making it to the middle of the lake, he realized there was literally nowhere to go and had to awkwardly paddle back to shore where officers were waiting. He was promptly arrested and charged with resisting arrest and multiple drug offenses. The Irish have a pretty ancient language, though there are certain words they don't have in their vocabulary. Yes and no, for example. So, how do they respond in the positive or the negative? Simple. They say things like ta, meaning is, or nil, meaning is not. This does the same job, but it's surprising to hear they lack something as basic as yes or no. It's also fascinating to hear that ancient Latin doesn't have specific yes and no words. The language we use today has what's called a two-form system. However, this is apparently child's play compared to other ways of speaking. Language with the most consonants. That title belongs to the obscure language of Ku, which you can hear if you visit parts of Botswana and Namibia. It's a language where vowels are most definitely not a priority, with an incredible 130 consonants against just 28 vowels. The people who speak this language number approximately 3,000, and they are semi-nomadic, meaning they live both permanently and on the move. If you think that an octopus can only have 8 tentacles, well, then prepare to have your mind blown harder than a blowfish in a bicycle pump. According to a report from 2008, a 3-foot-long, 7-pound octopus was found to have 96 tentacles. It was located at Shima Marineland Aquarium, now reportedly closed, in Japan. Well, I guess you could describe this astonishing creature of the sea as a multitasker. Coffee cups are bad. I'm not talking about coffee, though it can be bad for you in large quantities. What I mean are the non-recyclable coffee cups that I'm sure many of you use and dispose of each day. It may seem like they can be recycled, but they can't. Why? Well, it's because they have a plastic lining to protect them from getting soggy. Billions of them reportedly go to landfill, which is fascinating, but also a little worrying. Can you believe that these are all actual place names of locations in Scotland, America, and Australia? There's a village called Dull, an Oregon town named Boring, and a town down under called Bland. They formed a so-called Trinity of Tedium. Together, they ensure that, while their place names aren't inspiring, their attitude to tourism is a whole bunch of fun. Turning 21 is a big deal for all of us, but for Danny Melody, it came with a very public lesson in bad decisions. While celebrating in Dublin, he spotted a classic photo stand. You know those boards where you stick your head through a hole for a silly picture? It seemed like a great idea at the time, until he couldn't get his head back out. His friends, being the supportive crew that they were, did the only logical thing. Filmed it and uploaded it to YouTube. Passers-by joined in, snapping photos of the trapped leprechaun. Danny eventually got free, but the internet never forgets. George C. Parker was one of history's boldest con artists. and I do not say that lightly. In the early 1900s, Parker convinced several gullible victims that he owned the Brooklyn Bridge and was looking for investors to help run a toll booth. Some fell so hard that they paid up to $50,000 for the rights to the bridge. Police had to step in multiple times when new owners tried setting up tolls. Parker also sold Grant's Tomb, the Statue of Liberty, and the Met. If nothing else, it's safe to say the guy had unmatched confidence. We've all heard this cure. If you get stung by a jellyfish, just pee on it. But unless you're trying to make a beach day really awkward, don't. It doesn't work. The idea is that the urine is acidic enough to neutralize the jellyfish's toxins, but here's the problem. Your pee isn't nearly strong enough to counteract it. At best, the warmth might feel nice for a second, but well, that's about it. If you want actual relief, rinse it with vinegar or salt water. Otherwise, you'll just end up in pain and covered in pee. While TikTok might soon be lost to America, it's good to know that it has a community for everyone. Even nuns. Sister Lisa H., a devout Catholic, started posting on TikTok while working in a Christian college. After joining a convent, she kept at it, sharing Bible readings, reflections, and Q&A sessions about convent life. Her popularity is so incredible that she has almost 150,000 followers. And she's not alone. There are so many nuns on TikTok that hashtag NunTalk is officially a thing. From dances to reaction clips, it's basically a modern-day Sister Act, but with more lip-syncing. Of all the weird laws still hanging around, this one might be one of the most random. In Alabama, it is illegal to carry an ice cream cone in your back pocket. Sounds ridiculous, right? But back in the 1800s, horse thieves actually used this trick to lure horses away without technically stealing them. They'd casually walk past with an ice cream cone sticking out of their pocket, and curious horses would follow. Since the thief never physically led or rode the horse, it was tough to charge them with theft. Back in 1950, journalist Dorothy Rowe made an interesting prediction. She said by the year 2000, every woman would be at least 6 feet tall. Not just a few, all of them. She claimed that scientific evidence supported her idea and that better nutrition and healthcare would turn women into perfectly proportioned Amazons. Fast forward to today and yeah, that didn't happen. Women are a bit taller than they were in the 50s, but not by much. So unless science is really slacking, it looks like we'll have to wait a little longer for our Amazonian future. While a lot of people want to work for a company that respects both its employees and the environment, they also accept that such a thing isn't always possible. How do we know a lot of people want that as an ideal? In 2017, a survey was conducted by the investment advisor Stash, who concluded that 79% of those asked wanted an ethical approach from big business. They'd even take a pay cut for the privilege of working for such a business. Supermarkets are people's go-to destination for groceries and, well, plenty of other things. It seems like they've always been around, but to think that is to overlook just how far and how fast they've expanded over the decades. Their product numbers are staggering. It's been calculated that the number of available supermarket products went from around 9,000 in the 90s to approximately 40,000 in recent times. Exhaling during sleep affects your weight. How is this even possible? Well, if you think about it, it actually makes sense. When we exhale, we breathe out fat, which sounds horrible, but it's all part of our body's natural processes. We're exhaling carbon dioxide, part of which comes from fat molecules at an atomic level. So our lungs play a role in weight loss during sleep, expelling fat and also water. I wouldn't recommend it as a diet plan, though, because that fat is coming back once you get up and start going about your day. Finland is routinely described as the happiest place on Earth, but I'm not sure that was the case between the 12th and early 19th centuries. During that period, Finland was the property of Sweden, and it wasn't a voluntary arrangement. This ownership was a conquest, so the Finns didn't get a say over whether to adopt the language and culture or follow the laws of the Swedish kingdom. They just had to do it, or else. Things didn't get much better with the next owner of Finland, which was Russia. It wouldn't be until 1917 that Finland achieved total independence. In 2006, scientists decided to tackle one of life's biggest mysteries. Why don't penguins' feet freeze off? After very close inspection, they discovered that penguins have a built-in heating system. Warm blood flows down their legs, transfers heat to the colder blood coming back up, and voila, no frostbite. But the best part about this study is that it actually led to real-world innovations, like better insulated clothing and heated gloves. So if your winter boots keep your toes warm, you probably have some very well-researched penguin feet to thank. We've all seen over-engineered solutions to simple problems, but this one takes the cake. I guess the croissant. Sensor-wake alarm clocks wake you up with the scent of fresh pastries, coffee, or peppermint instead of a screaming alarm. It uses scent cartridges that last 30 days, giving you a gentle, luxurious wake-up experience. And if you somehow sleep through it, no worries, it does come with a backup alarm. Now, according to those in the know, the replacement of scent cartridges every month isn't exactly convenient, but hey, if waking up to the smell of croissants is wrong, do we really want to be right? Winning a Nobel Prize is one of the highest honors in the world. But if you're looking for a prize for the weirdest research, the Ig Nobel Prize might be your thing. The Annals of Improbable Research give awards for scientific studies that make people laugh first and think later. For instance, in 2017, the Economics Prize went to 6 researchers who studied whether voodoo dolls could help employees cope with their horrible bosses. The results? Stabbing, burning, and crushing a mini version of their boss actually made the workers feel much better. Though there's no word on if any managers mysteriously develop back pain, but according to science, it works. Winning the lottery is already a long shot, but winning with the numbers 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10? Well, that's exactly what happened in South Africa in December 2020 when 20 people hit the jackpot and split $7.8 million. The internet immediately called foul because, come on, what are the odds? And seeing as South Africa ranks 83rd out of 180 countries on the Corruption Perceptions Index, well, you can't really blame the public for being suspicious. The National Lotteries Commission, however, launched an investigation, but after checking, they found no fraud, no rigging, just 20 lucky people who either went with their gut or figured, why not? If you've ever wondered where the center of the universe is, forget New York, London, or Tokyo, it's Wallace, Idaho. Because of course it is. At the corner of 6th Street and Bank Street, you'll find a manhole cover proudly declaring Wallace as the portal to the universe's core. Is there any scientific proof? Absolutely not. But the sign says so, and who are we to argue with a manhole cover? Chimpanzees identify each other through the shape of their butts. This bizarre science fact that you didn't know you needed was established via a 2016 study conducted by researchers from Denmark. Just as we humans never forget a face, chimpanzees, well, they never forget a rear end. Plus, like us, they have trouble recognizing things when they're upside down. To quote from the iconic movie soundtrack, "My heart will go on." Of course, one thing that won't be going on forever is the Titanic, which is currently sitting over 12,000 feet under the water in the North Atlantic. It famously sank in 1912, and since then, the mighty ship has been consumed by bacteria. Nasty things are busy making a meal of RMS Titanic as I speak. One example is Halomonas titanicae, which was identified in 2011. Long rusticles, or icicle-like structures of rust, are partly caused by this deep-sea bacteria. Eventually, the pressure from bacteria and other forces will become too great, and the Titanic will be swept into the sea for good. Earthquakes may be one of our most destructive natural disasters, but they do have some fascinating positives about them. Did you know they're capable of producing gold? We actually rely on them for some of our gold deposits. How it all works is that the powerful forces of the quake reduce the pressure levels in underground fractures. These contain water, and more importantly, gold. This isn't solid gold, but a dissolved form of the sparkly substance, comparable to a gold soup. Without the considerable pressure, this soup becomes solid, meaning we get new deposits of precious metal. How do you use Street View technology to capture a desert? Well, in that situation, you need to get creative. Because it's difficult for humans to move around that kind of territory, Google relied on the natural world to do the job. A camel was fitted with a 30-degree camera so it could film the Liwa Desert in Abu Dhabi, part of the United Arab Emirates. In case you're wondering, the camel's name was Rafia, so if you see them on your street, don't worry, they're probably working freelance. It's normal for someone to forget things, particularly as we get older. However, scientists believe that forgetfulness is actually a good thing when it comes to the overall health of your brain. In fact, the act of forgetting could be your brain's way of decluttering, so you can think more clearly and avoid burning out. I'm sorry, what was I talking about again? Slugs love beer. This fact is surprising, but it doesn't mean that they're alcoholics or anything like that. It's actually the smell that attracts them to a brewski. That yeasty, malty aroma is irresistible to them. Unfortunately for the slugs, they can drown in the beer. It's great if you want to trap some slugs in order to remove them, but again, not so great for the poor slug. Still, well, at least I guess they die happy. Interestingly, slugs have also been observed drinking the beer and then staggering away, or whatever it is that hammered slugs do. Oof, onions in a wound? Ouch. Even the thought is just making me wince. That said, they're believed to be surprisingly effective in the treatment of minor wounds. A study in 2023 showed that the peel from onions contains a bunch of useful ingredients that'll help sterilize and heal those cuts. Extract from onion peel as a cosmetics ingredient can also improve the appearance of broken skin. We all know words matter in legal contracts, but in 2019, an Israeli court ruled that emojis matter too. A landlord sued his prospective tenants after they backed out of renting his apartment, arguing that their messages, filled with champagne bottles, dancing emojis, and smiley faces, gave him the idea that the deal was sealed. He took down his listing, only for them to change their minds. The court agreed, and the prospective tenants had to pay damages. A few years ago, selfies were all the rage, timing be damned, and it's given us pretty interesting arrests. In 2015, 2 California tourists visited the Roman Colosseum, admired its ancient beauty, and then carved their initials into it. Because apparently, souvenirs just weren't enough. Despite clear signs in both English and Italian warning against vandalism, they happily took selfies with their crime scene, right before getting arrested. Shocked, they claimed they had no idea they were breaking the law. The judge didn't believe them. You've heard of Illuminati theories, secret societies, and reptilian overlords, but have you heard of the Hollywood star whackers? In 2010, actor Randy Quaid and his wife Evie fled to Canada, claiming they were escaping a shadowy organization that was killing off celebrities. According to Quaid, this hit squad has a list of stars they plan to take down. No actual proof of the star whackers exists, but since Quaid and his wife are still alive, and currently living in Vermont, we can only assume they're either hiding or that the star whackers are really bad at staying on target. Most jobs require effort, skills, and come with at least some level of stress. But what if I told you there's a job where all you have to do is sleep? Yeah, it exists. Professional sleepers get paid to sleep, and depending on where they do it, the paycheck can be pretty impressive. The scientific community needs sleep testers to conduct research, mattress companies hire test subjects, and there are even artists that are willing to pay for sleeping subjects. It's not your standard 9 to 5, but if you play your cards right, you could make a solid living by literally doing nothing. Drug smugglers will try anything to move their product, including turning into statues. In 2010, Colombian police seized a World Cup trophy replica made of 11 kilograms or 24 pounds of cocaine before it could be shipped to Spain. Because nothing says team spirit like a chemically improved trophy, right? Meanwhile, in the US, authorities intercepted a Jesus statue made of cocaine en route from Mexico to Dallas. Despite their best efforts, sniffer dogs saw right through the disguise, leaving the smugglers out of luck and out of options. Once upon a time, payphones were for awkward collect calls and digging through your pockets for spare change. Today, they recite poetry on demand. Thanks to the Telepoem Project, defunct phone booths in Arizona, California, New Mexico, Pennsylvania, and Iowa have been transformed into interactive poetry hubs. You just have to step inside, dial a number, and listen as a vintage phone recites one of over 1,000 poems. And if poetry isn't your thing, Washington, D.C.'s joke phones got you covered, offering knock-knock jokes, fun facts, and positivity at the push of a button. McDonald's burgers are made from beef. Who knew? Well, everyone, of course, but did you know that they used to cook their fries in beef tallow? Tallow is clarified fatty animal tissue, which doesn't sound very delicious. People rarely want to know how the sausage is made, right? Or I guess in this case, the French fries. Whether it sounds appetizing or not, beef tallow did a great job making those fries crispy and tasty. This is why McDonald's used it for all those years. In 1990, they stopped, making the fries less savory tasting, but also more enjoyable for non-carnivores. Here's a fascinating fact that'll change the way you see California grizzly bears. If we humans hadn't settled in their territory, they'd be eating a vegan diet. Strange as it may sound, the bears used to have a largely plant-based menu, snacking and gorging on whatever was on the trees or lying on the ground. Because we decided to live in California, we inadvertently added ourselves to the grizzly food chain. So remember, the next time you're being eaten by a bear, it's probably your fault. We eat rice regularly, but it doesn't seem to have much of a taste on its own. Without something on top of it, or a flavoring of some kind, well, rice is bland. Or is it? Welcome to the crazy world of meat-infused rice. In 2024, it emerged that scientists had been working on a project where beef cells were grown inside grains of rice. Apparently, this rice tastes pretty nutty, which is appropriate because, well, it sounds nutty too. Why are scientists doing this? It's hoped the experiment will ultimately provide us with a sustainable, eco-friendly source of savory food. Drugs are known to have side effects, but this medical story from 2024 is especially fascinating. Researchers noticed that the drug omalizumab, also known as Xolair, could reduce the risk from certain food allergies. It was injected into the test subjects, many of whom went on to show a resilience to problem foods such as peanuts. The study has led to the drug being used to combat potential allergic reactions. This news must come as a relief to those who need to be super careful when eating out. Electric cars have been part of our lives for some time. The first one was actually driven all the way back in the late 19th century. So we've had these vehicles for a while, which makes me wonder, well, what about the electric plane? Amazingly, the first commercial flight for an electric plane happened in 2022. Nicknamed Alice, the plane was made by Aviation Aircraft and flew for 8 minutes at a height of 3,500 feet. A baseball at Walmart will set you back about $2.97. A baseball signed by Babe Ruth, Ty Cobb, Cy Young, and Honus Wagner, a cool $632,369. That's what one lucky collector paid in an auction in 2018 for a ball signed by 11 Hall of Famers during the first ever induction in 1939. Now, if you think that was pricey, you'll be shocked to learn that the most expensive baseball ever sold wasn't even signed. It was Mark McGwire's 70th home run ball from 1998, which comic book artist Todd McFarlane bought for $3 million. And McGwire? He could have had the ball for free, if he had just agreed to meet the fan who caught it. Instead, that fan sold it and became a multimillionaire. Oof. Since I'm talking about expensive things, how do you feel about flushing money down the toilet? For the bargain price of $1.3 million per roll, you can own golden toilet paper. Yes, real 24-karat gold woven into a roll that's technically safe to use, but let's be honest, if you actually use it, you might be beyond saving. Unlike other gold items that last forever, this one and done. But don't worry, your $1 million purchase comes with a free bottle of champagne, because evidently, that's what seals the deal. Victorian England had a lot of etiquette rules, but this one might be the most joy-crushing. Women were expected to cover their mouths when laughing or smiling too broadly. Why? Because heaven forbid a woman show too much emotion in public. Modesty was everything, and a big open-mouthed laugh was seen as unladylike, something that could actually damage a woman's reputation. Meanwhile, men could grin, guffaw, and chuckle all they wanted. Thankfully, times have changed, and women are now free to laugh out loud without worrying about scandalizing high society. This might just be the item that you guys thank me for the most. Tucked away in Jefferson, Vermont is a place known as Golden Dog Farm, where they grow all the usual farm staples: maple syrup, honey, fruit. But that's not why visitors keep coming back. They come for the golden retrievers. Known as a happy, this lovable pack of Goldens is the highlight of the farm's happy hour, where guests can book an hour-long session to play, cuddle, and snap photos with up to 12 friendly dogs. The farm's owners never expected their venture to go viral, but once word spread online, reservations started selling out fast. For many visitors, especially those who have lost a pet or can't have dogs at home, it's an experience filled with joy, comfort, and a whole lot of fur. Science and humor rarely go hand in hand, but Project Steve is proof that they should. The peculiar initiative started as a tongue-in-cheek response to organizations that use scientist petitions to push anti-evolution agendas. But unlike those lists, this one has only one requirement. You have to be a Steve, Stephanie, or Steven to sign. With over 1,500 Steves already endorsing evolution, the project makes this hilarious yet solid point. When you can gather this many scientists with the same name to support a theory, probably not up for debate. Beyond the fun, however, Project Steve clearly turns the tables on misleading tactics, showing just how ridiculous it is to base credibility on names rather than expertise. The message is clear. When even just the Steves are enough to prove a point, the debate is already settled. Trees not only talk, they can protect themselves. This has been seen in African acacia trees, who can warn each other about predators such as giraffes. Giraffes may seem pretty cool to us, but they can cause damage to an acacia tree by eating their leaves. The tree produces ethylene gas, which is detected by its neighbors. This is bad news for the giraffe because the trees can release tannin into their leaves. Tannins interfere with the good stuff in the tree, leading to illness and even death for the unsuspecting giraffe. I don't mean genes that haven't been watched in a long time. I'm referring to the way that fungi helps genes look more fashionable. Yeah, you heard me right. The fungus Trichoderm ricci produces what's called cellulase, an enzyme which is powerful enough to attack the fabric of genes and give them that distinctive stone-washed appearance. It's icky, but probably cheaper than buying a bunch of stones. If you miss the weather forecast and you're out in the forest, you might be able to predict what the sky is going to do by looking at pine cones. When you see a pine cone that's closed, it means that things are, well, probably going to get wet. The cones are wanting to guard their seeds, so they do the plant equivalent of shutting all the windows before the rain comes. In the Peruvian Andes, you'll find a city called Arequipa, a name that translates as behind the summit. The city has over 1 million people living in it, though they do so under the watchful eye of not just one, but 4 volcanoes. Arequipa is intimately involved with volcanic activity. Even its buildings were created using sillar, or white rock from volcanoes. I mean, I've heard of being caught between a rock and a hard place, but this is ridiculous. Well, now that you know about more fascinating facts that'll change the way you see things, well, you're ready for my awesome question. This one is guaranteed to blow your mind. So, my question is, what are the oldest living structures on planet Earth? A. Dinosaur bones. B. Coral reefs. C. Trees. Or D. Volcanic rocks. Let me know your answers in the comments, and as always, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, click that notification bell so you don't miss out on any new content, and I will catch you next time. And check out whatever video our editor decides to put here. Check out that one. See you guys later.